So magic tricks are different because magic is, there's sleight of hand, right? So you're deceiving your eye by making you look at the wrong place at the right time when I do a move. And I can practice that move over and over and over until I get it perfect so that when I perform it for you, it works, right?
Okay.
Magic, you have props. Mentalism, there's no props. Like, I don't need you to pick a card anymore. I don't need it.
Right.
I can just tell you, think of a card. And that's where I go with it. So now you start knowing how people think, and you, in essence, reverse engineer the human mind. It's kind of like magic of the mind. And so that's where it kind of went from magic, and I kept doing more of the mentalism, more of it. But mentalism has a very steep learning curve. So most mentalists, they drop off because I'm just going to go back to magic tricks. This works every time.
So it's more difficult to learn.
Way more difficult.
Is it sheltered? Like, is the material on it difficult to find? Is like
it's I think it's more that people don't have the thick skin. Like the same way you said the quitting mentality where I came back the year later, most people won't improve because you can't practice mentalism in front of a mirror. You can practice magic. So when I do the trick on you and it's a card trick, no offense to magic, it's great, but what we're talking about is a much higher level. I can't get it right. And the first few times you do it, the first 100 times, you eat like you're going to get it wrong, and most people don't want to do that.
I want you to pause the video. Let me know your unfiltered thoughts about what he said down in the comments below, and then come back here and hear mine. What is good, guys? It is Reed and welcome back to another video. Today we got Dear Magicians episode 13, Mentalism is Magic. This is going to be a potentially controversial video. I don't think so. I'm not a controversial guy. I have some thoughts about some recent current events in the magic community and just some overall philosophy and thoughts in general that I think will be really interesting. Now, if you don't know the purpose of these Dear Magician videos, they're kind of like open letters to the magic community, a place where I can rant or talk about different topics. And the key is that you guys let me know your thoughts as well in the comments down below, and we can have a nice discussion, whether you agree or disagree. So please let me know your thoughts both now, before watching mine, and then at the end after you've heard my thoughts if you have anything else left to say. Hey guys, Editor Reed here. I just wanted to quickly jump in and let you know, if you have not seen, I have just launched the Ultimate Magic Challenge right here on the channel, and you can participate to win one of 3 incredible prizes. All the info will be in the link in the description, or go check out the video linked up here. You can get all the information. The deadline to submit is August 31st, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern, and all the rules of this fun little competition are over there. So I really hope you'll consider submitting an entry, and best of luck if you do decide to enter. Before we jump in, if you'd like to learn the best mentalism here on YouTube, how to become a well-rounded mentalist who is an expert in the fundamentals and learn some incredible mentalism, my channel membership is available to learn right here on YouTube, linked in the description. If you go upgrade to the wizard tier of my membership, you can also get access to some of my best material, hours and hours of massive masterclasses on propless mentalism, my full live lecture, and a whole bunch more. The mentalism course is currently in the book test section, so it is absolutely killer routine after killer routine every single week. We are at over 40 tutorials, something like 10 book tests, and a whole bunch of other great stuff. Billet work, publicity effects, all kinds of awesome stuff is on there. If you'd like some one-on-one private lessons from me, the links are also available in the description. I can help you one-on-one become the best magician or mentalist, help you grow your business, improve your magic, work on the call, the bottom deal, propless mentalism, anything at all. I have some great deals going on right now. They won't be there forever, so make sure you take advantage of those now. You can get 3 lessons, 5 lessons, get a lesson free. It is absolutely awesome. And if you just want to get a taste and just try 1 lesson and then decide that you want some more, I'll credit that lesson towards the price of some of the discount packages. So again, links are in the description, or if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email, rf.sleight@gmail.com. Let's jump right into the video. Dear magicians, mentalism is magic. So you're probably sitting here asking yourself one of 2 things. 1, what does he mean mentalism is magic? Or 2, of course mentalism is magic. What is he talking about? And regardless of what camp you fall into or what your first thought is, I think this is a super interesting topic, something that has been on my mind for several weeks now, since some recent event occurred, last month that we'll talk about at the end of the video. And it's really got me thinking on the whole topic of magic and mentalism. As a little bit of backstory, mentalism began as a form of magic, right? It started as sort of mental magic. So it was magic, it could be card magic, coin magic, whatever. any kind of magic that was just framed to have a mental twist to it, whether the spectator was thinking of a card or thinking of something or thinking of someone or remembering something. It was framed in a way that was magic. And that's the key. It was framed, right? It was all about the frame. It was still magic. It was still the same sleight of hand methods, but it was framed as if there was a mental twist to it. Then it started to develop into the performer having more of a mental involvement in it, where the performer might be influencing the participant or using psychology or kind of trying to pick up on what they're thinking of. Again, this was all based originally on magical methods. It was sleight of hand, it was peaks, it was all kinds of traditional methods in magic. It was magic of the mind. You know, that's what they called it, magic of the mind. Still very fooling, but just a different frame on our typical magical ideas. And eventually developed the idea of mentalism. It developed as sort of a branch of magic, sort of like you'd think of coin magic. And the topic of this branch was mind reading. It started to get away from some of the more traditional magic props. It started to become more pure, where the spectator would just think of something and it would get revealed rather than, you know, revealing a thought of card or, you know, the magician picking up on what hand the coin is in or what's the date on the coin. It started to become more personal. Then, you know, effects and methods started to develop on their own, independent of other magical methods. There started to become mentalism methods, you know, thumb writers, impression pads, and billet work, and all these things. So it really started to develop its own. And that's when I think it really kind of stood as its own branch of magic. You had major mentalists, major influential mentalists like Animan, and you had these influential books be written like 13 Steps, Practical Mental Magic, and, you know, the Jinx series and all this. And it really started to develop into its own branch. It had its own methods, it had its own effects, it had its own plots now, book tests, Pegasus page, name guesses. And then it continued to develop into more modern times where you have things like propless mentalism and tech mentalism and electronic devices, right? And mentalism now stands on its own as a branch of magic. This is where we start to see the separation occur. In more recent times, mentalism has started to become its own thing, or people are trying to make it its own thing. It started as a branch of magic, this mental magic, magic of the mind. It is now starting to say, well, there's magic, there's coin magic, card magic, stage magic, parlor magic, and then there's mentalism. Mentalism is like hypnosis, it's another thing. We don't really consider hypnosis magic. There's pseudo-hypnosis effects, but those are magical effects with mechanical methods that aren't anything to do with the theory and the principles that make hypnosis work. And I think it's because mentalism started to develop its own methods and effects that could stand on its own that people started to treat it as its own thing. Now there's a whole bunch of other reasons for this as well, which I'll get into in a minute. But I don't really think that's right, because coin magic has its own methods, has its own sleights, muscle pass, and the classic palm for coins, and edge grip, and all these other coin magic terms that I'm not all that familiar with because I'm not a coin magician, but I know they exist, right? It has its own books, Bobo's Card Magic, has its own plots, 3 fly and coins across and these things. Stage magic, same thing, own methods, own concepts, philosophies, but these are all still forms of magic. And I tend to wonder that if we just stuck to it as being called mental magic, would there ever have been this discrepancy? Is it because we took the word magic out of it and called it mentalism that people think that it's different? My position is that it's not different. It's not any different. It is just another branch of magic, the same way that coin magic is. And I do think it's a bit of a problem, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I do wonder that if the name just had magic in it, is that all it is? Because it has, yes, its own methods, own effects, own plots, own people, and people start just calling themselves mentalists and they don't call themselves magicians anymore. You know, one big difference that I can think of is people call themselves mentalists. People don't call themselves typically coin magicians or card magicians outside of like our magic space. They're not advertised as like, hey, I'm a coin magician, really. You know, some people I guess do illusionists. There's that term. but oftentimes it's like wedding magician or family magician. It's not like type of magic. It's not like I'm a card magician. Like typically that's not like what you're being advertised as to the public. You're a magician who does card tricks, right? It's interesting with mentalism where people will just be a mentalist, and so maybe that has something to do with it. People are really trying to separate themselves. So let's talk about why performers are doing this, why there's been such a separation between magic and mentalism. Quick pause in your regularly scheduled program. I just want to let you guys know that I offer one-on-one virtual private magic lessons, perfect for beginner to advanced magicians and mentalists looking to improve their technique, sleight of hand, learn any of my best effects, learn the fundamentals of card magic, mentalism, or absolutely anything. This is the best value in magic in terms of getting you to become a better magician. I can sit with you one-on-one, tell you exactly what you personally need to work on, and teach you a bunch of the incredible material that I perform in my professional repertoire. If you decide to take a lesson with me, you will get 24/7 personal contact, you'll get custom curriculums, personally tailored effects. Every lesson you will get a downloadable recording, giving you something you can keep with you forever and always return to learn at your own pace. Over on my website, I have a bunch of reviews and testimonials, both video and written form, that you guys can check out. And if you'd like some more info or to book a lesson, all you have to do is head over to the link in the description, or feel free to send me an email at rf.sleights@gmail.com. Now, back to the video. Well, I think the big reason, and I totally understand this, but I think it's gone too far, is that mentalists want to separate themselves from magic to add more credibility to what they do. Because if you say you're a magician and you read minds, people are always going to assume it's a trick. So I understand in that sense why we've taken out the word magic from mentalism. Because, and I'll be honest, and it's the truth, mentalism is stronger when they believe that it could be real. There's an element of realism to it. It takes away totally from the impact of it when you say this is all just tricks, because then they're looking for that trick. Then your billet work, all the justifications you give for why they're writing it down for them to visualize it, none of that stuff can fly anymore if it's just a trick, or at least not in the same way. And so for me, I always operate in the gray area, where when they ask what I do, I say it's a combination of techniques, body language, psychology, influence, and I do the best that I can to get an educated guess at what you're thinking of, but no, I don't have a portal into your mind. I just use these various techniques, right? So it's a very gray area. It's really a non-answer, but it allows them to keep the element of it being real alive and continue to, kind of ponder on what it might be. And it allows me to, get away with all my justifications and really continue to make it at least potentially feel real, which totally enhances the effect. So I get it. It's a credibility thing. I think I'm someone who I've done a really good job at mending my character, because most mentalists, they get fully away from card magic. Like most mentalists still start in another form of magic. You don't usually just start as a mentalist, right? You start in card magic typically. Most mentalists ditch the playing cards, right? And I will never ditch playing cards. I love playing cards too much. And so a lot of my work has been, how do you fuse the two together? How do you make it feel like it's not gimmicky like the magic could feel like? Well, one, you elevate your magic to not feel gimmicky, or two, you make a clear distinction between what those two things are. Hey, this is magic sleight of hand, yes, we all know that, but then this is actual magic of the mind, and this is something different. This is a little bit more, the same way I use sleight of hand for that, this I'm using body language, psychology, all these things. So it's, again, it comes back to the way that it's framed, and that's how I approach it. But it's interesting to me why people are willing to, like, right off the bat, like 99% of people aren't going to believe that your card magic is real, like it's real magic, but they're willing to accept mentalism. And I think it's because it's a newer thing and there's still this gray area around it. People don't really know. They see different performers online, they're like, oh, they think it must be real, our methods are so good now, right? Like all that stuff, people still don't really know. So it's like people are, I guess, just naive to it, and so it's still able to be thought of as real. And I think that's good, though, don't get me wrong, I think that's good. I don't want to be in a place where people know mentalism is as much of a trick as magic is, right? And that's kind of going to be the crux of what we get to when we do our case study in a minute. I think the key thing is, though, is to not forget that mentalism is still magic. Where it becomes a problem is ego. There's a huge ego on some of these mentalists who think that magicians are beneath them because what they do is more real and more impressive and all this. While I think mentalism can have more of a connection with people, like, if you guess someone's mom's name, you know, changing a card in their hand is never going to compete with that, for sure. But you're no better. You're still using the same techniques. You have to know what you're doing is just magic, framed in a different way. You know, same type of methods, trickery, all that stuff. And it's this ego when you start to think you're better because you're a mentalist, where I really have a problem with that. And that's kind of what we're going to get to in a minute. I get it, magic can feel gimmicky sometimes with like sponge balls and cups and balls and some of these more like traditional props that are a bit corny, and that's more of a performer's choice. Like some people can, you know, Jack Rhodes did his cups and balls and I loved it, and I hate cups and balls and I think it's all corny. His wasn't though. So there is ways to do it, you know, but his was so out there and unique. But like, it's probably going to be hard for him to even do a routine like that and then try to follow it up with like a serious mentalism routine, right? So then it comes back into your character. But I just think being disingenuous and people pretending like mentalism is not just another branch of magic is where we run into this issue. I mean, we've touched on some of the ideas why that might be, because they've tried to get away from it, because they've taken the word magic out, because they have their own title of mentalist, but it's still just magic, right? And you can never get that twisted. You're part of the magic community and you're no better than anyone else. So when is this a problem? The biggest problem is when it's fueling your ego and you're thinking you're better than other people. That's when it's a huge problem that you think mentalism is not magic. I think when you're trying to sell that to other magicians, that's a big problem. Like you're trying to say like, oh no, what I do is mind reading and mentalism. Like, no, you're just peeking a billet. Like obviously, you know, if you're jamming with other magicians, you don't need to try to sell, you know, that it's real. Same thing like with your friends and family. Family's often not going to take you seriously when you tell you, I woke up one day and now I can read minds, right? Like, it's a bit disingenuous. But when you act like you're better than others because of the type of magic you do, that's when there's a major problem. Some people will say when you lie to your audience that you can read minds, and even people would say what I do, leaving it ambiguous and having disclaimers and all this is the right thing to do, where you're saying at the beginning that this is all fake and trickery. And I don't agree with that. I mean, some people do think that lying to your audience is wrong, and I think outright lying, and if you're lying for nefarious purposes, like if you're lying as a psychic, trying to say like, oh, I'm gonna talk to your dead relatives or that kind of thing, big problem. But if you're using it for entertainment, there's a lot more leeway. And I don't ever want people leaving thinking like he can see all my thoughts in like the sense like how I have a portal into the mind, like what we think of traditional mind reading. I like them to think of like, oh, he can kind of get into my head using various techniques, right? And I think this is a great transition into the Oz Pearlman on Joe Rogan situation. Now, this was the whole thing that inspired this video for me. And I think Oz has a lot of similar philosophies that I do on mentalism in terms of how he approaches it, how he wants to come across. Because he's very clear that, you know, he can't just read your mind, but he uses a lot of these same techniques that I list off, psychology, influence, all that stuff. Disclaimer, before we get into this, I love Oz Pearlman. I think he's fantastic. I love his performances. He's been on a roll lately and I absolutely love everything. He's fantastic. There's absolutely nothing about him. He seems like a great guy. He's a crazy athlete, which I admire. Seems like a very competitive guy. So I respect all of that totally. It was just the Rogan interview that parts of it rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm not even sure that there was any other way that he could have done it. I think maybe now that I've thought about it for a while, he probably didn't have much choice, and it may have been Joe's not fault, but the nature of the questions that he was asking and being a little bit more inquisitive that kind of pigeonholed him into the spot where he had to answer certain questions in this way. And I'd be curious to talk to him and see if that's how he feels. There were definitely some things that rubbed me the wrong way, and some of it you would have seen in that first clip that I played at the beginning of this video. So like I said, this is the reason I made this video. I watched the entire interview, very informative and interesting watch, so I'd recommend you check it out to get the full context, because I don't want you just hearing this clip out of context. But essentially the problem was I kind of felt he was just a bit condescending to magicians, one. You know, there was a lot of talk about like even amateur mentalists, like, oh, here's what some people do or what magicians do, but I do this and it's way more difficult and way better, right? There was a lot of talk about that with magicians, like, oh yeah, I'm not just doing card tricks, like, you know, this is magician stuff, but like what I do is way harder. And for me, that's just like, that really rubbed me the wrong way, because like it's very disingenuous in the sense that like I know what he's doing isn't any harder probably a lot of it's easier because mentalism, there isn't like the dexterity sleight of hand in a lot of things. But there's a ton of audience management and performance stuff that's a lot more difficult. And he's fantastic at that. And the way his mind works and he's able to pre-show and come up with all this stuff, fantastic, right? I just think it's disingenuous. I don't think one's harder than the other. And so that I didn't really love. And I think that was not the right way to say it. But then the tricky part is, you know, Rogan was super inquisitive. And one of the things that I feel like kind of pigeonholed him is like, Joe was like, well, who did you learn from, right? And he's talking about 13 steps. You know, I think that was a mistake. I think when you introduce a book like that, like Joe said he was going to buy the book and read it. And when Oz is there trying to like convince him of all this influence stuff, and then he tells him about a book like 13 Steps, and if Joe does go buy and read it, he's just going to learn about thumb writers and billet peaks and methods that aren't all that exciting for what Oz is telling Joe that he's doing. It's completely the opposite. There's all mechanical methods. So either Joe's going to read it and be like, well, this guy was just BSing me, or he's going to read it and be like, well, this doesn't make any sense, and just be more confused. So either way, it's kind of a lose-lose, and I'm not really sure why. Like, I mean, again, he's on the podcast, he asked a question, you're thinking on the fly, so I totally understand. But I think in hindsight, that probably wasn't the best answer, but at the same time, it's tough to give a book. Like maybe giving something like the Cold Reading book by Ian Rowland would have been better, which I think he maybe did mention, but not in the same way, like saying like, oh, that's a good book to read, because that is more like psychological, like, you know, I think if Oz is trying to give the persona of like psychology influence, then maybe a book on psychology would have been better than like a 13 Steps, right? And he did kind of save it, and again, it comes back to the same problem though. He saved it, but not in a way that like I felt was like a little disingenuous, but he's like, oh, this is like really amateur though. Like what I do is way, like this is where I start, but this is way better than that. It's like, it's not really. Like the tricks you did on Rogan use some methods that are in 13 Steps, right? There was that side of it, which kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but again, there were moments where I feel like he's pigeonholed, and the big thing that's pigeonholing him too is like, I totally agree with the way he presents himself as the influence guy. Like that's what I do too. So I'm not even sure what I would have done in all of these situations too, especially in the moment, because I'm sure he didn't plan like, oh, what book would I tell Joe if he asked, right? Obviously. But when you come across that way, like I say, I think Joe is more of the problem, not that it's his fault, but Joe's asking him all these questions about what he does, and he's, you know, playing his character, which he should do. He's got a huge brand. You know, it's his business. He's got to keep up the image, so I understand. So he's now playing into his character. Oh, I use influence, psychology, all the stuff that, you know, obviously is just the show, the character. But then Joe's really, he's an inquisitive guy, so he's actually asking about these things. Like, how do you learn it? How can you use it? Why don't you have scientists test this? Why don't you use this to, you know, you must be great in sales. You must be, and like, Oz is like, yeah, of course I am. And it's like, I mean, it's a bit eye-rolling for us as magicians, because we're like, oh, yeah, of course you're influencing him, like, you know. But again, you have to remember that stuff's for laymen, so you can't really like look down on him for that. It's all for laymen, right? It's all his persona, so that's all. I'm totally fine with all that. But when Joe starts asking you about like scientifically, like, why don't you get this tested by scientists? And he's like, well, I could fool all of them. I mean, if you set up the study with your conditions, yeah, you probably could. But like, if it's a science test condition where they like strip search you and make sure you don't have any, you know, tech on you or nothing, no gimmicks, and then you follow their direct conditions, they write something on an envelope, seal it, you don't see it, and you don't go anywhere near it, and you don't ask any questions, and they ask you to figure out what it is, like, you're not getting it. You know what I mean? So maybe it's because I'm an engineer, and like lying when you're trying to talk science, it kind of feels disingenuous to me a bit. Like I would not, I just know I wouldn't want to lie that like if someone is seriously inquiring about how I do it on like a scale of that size, but then again, if it's a scale that size, he's got this business, of course he wants to uphold his image, so I get it too. It's a very tough situation. I don't even know the answer, but like I just wouldn't want to mislead Joe to tell him and all of his audience, like he's asking these scientific questions. Could you do this? Could you do that? How did you go about this? Like he's genuinely interested. How could I go about learning some of that? And he's giving like total nonsense answers because he's trying to keep up the image. And that's the other part of it that just, and I don't know what you do really. I don't know if there's a better way you can give non-answers, but again, Joe is just such a tough interviewer. I don't think he would have taken a non-answer. He would have asked another question. In a lot of regards, I see where Oz was coming from and kind of just doing what he had to do, and why I say it's not that it's Joe's fault, but it's kind of he's the one who kind of caused the issues. I don't know. I'd be curious to know what you guys think. How do you handle that question? What do you do when someone's taking a genuine interest in what you're doing? Like genuine interest. And they're starting to try to understand the science behind what you're doing. Like maybe you can go talk about some genuine psychological methods that are like the 37 force. Like, oh, if you tell someone to name a number from 1 to 100, they're most likely to say 37 psychologically, because 3 and 7 are the most common numbers named between 1 and 10. Like maybe you could have translated it in that way, where you give like some genuine psychology examples and kind of just brush it off as like that's what a lot of this is. So you give a little bit without too much, but you're not being like outright lying, you know, saying like, oh, I could sell anyone anything and I'm the best in like business meetings because I can influence people and psychology, when all you were doing was like a billet peak or pre-show, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a really tricky, I don't know. I don't have a full answer for that, but I just know those two things rub me the wrong way. The condescending to magician part and the kind of being disingenuous when Joe was taking a genuine interest in our craft. Particularly that second thing, I don't exactly know how you answer it all the way either. But the whole condescending to magicians thing, I mean, I get it. He kind of pigeonholed himself by saying 13 steps, so that was maybe his only way out. But there was other parts where it had nothing to do with that, and he was still like saying like, oh, I'm so much better than all these magicians. And while he may be like a better performer, and obviously he's built this amazing brand, and like he's maybe has a better mind, like, but the methods you're doing don't make you better than anyone. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't sit right with me. Like one example with the whole like people taking a genuine interest is like, I'll have people, you know, I offer private lessons, and people will come to me who know nothing about magic, right? Like I've had people come to me and say like, oh, I want to learn how to read minds, and I'm like, okay, what's your experience? And they're like, none. And like it's a very tricky situation for me to navigate. Like, you know, they've paid for some lessons, so I want to help them, I want to show them something, but I also have to be real with them. Like they're coming to me thinking like I'm going to teach them how to read minds. I'm like, no, I'm going to teach you how to peek a piece of paper. You know, so breaking that to them is often like a disappointment. And then they'll see like, oh, I saw Oz Pearlman do it on this and he didn't peek it. I'm like, well, he did, or he did something similar, but you just didn't see it. Or like there's so much more, and it's going to take, you know, 100 lessons for me to teach you all of that. So there's kind of like a little bit of a letdown. I have to let them down, bring them down to reality, right? But I'm never going to tell someone like, oh yeah, we genuinely read minds, and then tell them like, oh, go ask your parents to name a number from 1 to 100 and it'll be 37 and there's your trick, go. It's not genuine, I don't know. But then it's like, do you have to be genuine with laymen? Because obviously we're always lying, and there is a bit of a lie, and every time I perform and say that I'm using influence and psychology, because I'm not. These people aren't taking a genuine interest in necessarily how I'm doing it. It's just for entertainment. And when they do ask, I'm just keeping on the illusion. But now I sound like I'm contradicting myself, right? For what I was saying earlier. So like it's such a sticky situation. I'm not even fully sure that I have the answer for that little part about like when people are taking a genuine interest. I think there's a way where you kind of just like scoot them off the trail, unless they're like really want to become a mentalist and you've like vetted them and like, okay, you can get them in. You know, at the end of the day, like I've taught people who are not mentalists, they're just regular laymen. I've taught them a couple of tricks. Like I even taught some people some propless mentalism. Like, hey, just say this script, do this, do this. We practiced it in our lessons and they actually got it down. They went and they blowed their friends and family away, and they were so grateful that, you know, I was able to show them that. That I don't think there's a problem with, like to share. If, you know, someone wants to perform, they're never going to be a mentalist, but that's fine, right? So there's like this gray area. I think ultimately, yeah, I would have just tried to keep it ambiguous, but like I said, Joe was really prying. So I'm not sure how well he would have been able to do that. And it might have been really hard with someone showing that genuine interest. And maybe you just have to keep up your image on that scale, right? I just think the condescending part to magicians was definitely wrong. And again, I'm sure he thinks this, but I would like to ask him, like, do you understand or do you think mentalism is magic? And that's what I want to ask all of you. What do you think? Is mentalism magic? Please, 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 I urge you, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. These videos are so important that we get some kind of discussion going, and it's absolutely awesome to hear everyone's opinion. So please let me know. This one is very interesting, and I don't even have all the answers on this topic, so I'd like to hear other people's thoughts. If you like these rant videos and want to see my thoughts on another controversial topic, check out this video right up here. Again, if you'd like to check out the channel membership, either the fairy tier, mentalist tier, or wizard tier, all is available at the link in the description, or if you'd like to check out some private lessons, they're down there as well. With all that said, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.